Hi, and welcome to the show, Stacey and Demi. So happy to have you guys here today. Thank
Hey,
you for
Rachel.
joining
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for connecting your schedules when I know there's like so much going on and it's hard to link up. So appreciate it. Um you guys have such a cool story and I want to jump right in and hear about let's go all the way back just to how you met. Like when you met, how you met, what how did that look? What did that
I'm
look like?
I'm gonna start then
Okay.
because I think that even though we share this story, it could quite possibly be different from both of our perspectives. But
Yeah.
we met in 2007, which was my first year of teaching. Demi was in sixth grade, and she was in my class, and she was maybe defiant, I would say. The memory that sticks out to me is that she was at first difficult to connect with because as a teacher, she didn't want to do what you said or whatever it was. And I had her in my class, and I had a teacher's assistant too. And the teacher's assistant had actually commented to me a couple of times, man, oh, I love all of our students, but it's so hard to connect with Demi. And she was going through her own stuff at that time, to her credit. But I just remember trying out a teaching tactic. I was 31 at the time, and telling her when I assigned her something to do, to say, I would just go up in maybe in her ear or something like that and say, "You're going to go out in the hallway right now, go to the water fountain, go to the bathroom, do whatever it is you need to do. And you're going to come back to your desk and you're sit down and do this work." And she was more than capable. She was
Yeah.
just like, "It'll be funny to watch you try and make me do that," you know? And for some reason, I believe that that was the technique rather than like send her to the principal's office or have her
Yeah.
sit out in the hall, like techniques that just don't do anything.
Yes.
For me, and maybe for her, was something that she was like, "Okay, I'll do what you say."
Which can I say, I don't like, I feel like gentle parenting is like a huge thing right now. At least in my generation, I do it all the time with my kid.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know this, but that is literally kind of what gentle parenting is.
Really?
Like,
Because it felt a little strict with me. It was like, give you a little bit of rope, but then you're gonna do what I say.
it's
And
like you made it up to me, you know,
Yeah,
which
I haven't even heard of the term, and I have little ones too. I haven't even heard of the term gentle parenting. Can you give us like a just a little mini bite about what that is?
it's kind of just like, if that's your idea, I don't know. It's gentle parenting is kind of just like a lot of patience because I
Uh-huh.
feel like people are quick to scold and
Hmm.
because we think like adults and kids don't think like adults. They don't have the same, they don't have any patience. We literally teach them how to eat, poop, and sleep, So I feel like it requires a whole lot of patience and taking steps back and breaks and stuff. And what Stacy did with what a lot of teachers would do for me, they would just, okay, go to the office, go get your discipline.
Right.
And Stacy would be like, let's, like it was like she was like, you don't have to do it right now, but we're gonna do it anyway.
Sure.
So
Yep.
instead of being like, do this right now, she was like, why don't you do something you want to do? Like, go take a walk, take a breath, and then we'll come back and we'll just figure it out.
I
I
think
love
there's
that.
some power in offering a little bit of control to the person who's resisting the being controlled, and
Leadership.
then saying, I'm going to let you make a decision, but then we're also going to do what we're going to do. And she
Yep.
was, I don't know that I knew at the time how effective it was, because to be honest, anytime you parent or teach or something, you sort of walk away going, I hope that works, like,
Right. Yeah, it's so
and
true.
in her case it did. So long story short, she was 12 at the time, and she was living with her grandmother and her mother and her sibling. And the
The other family members, it was a whole.
Okay.
during that year, her grandmother passed away,
Hmm.
and her mother lost their housing situation.
Hmm.
And so at some point, I built up some trust over that school year with Demi. And then at the end of the year, I remember this sticks out. I don't know why. She didn't have money to buy a yearbook, but at the end of the year, this was middle school, she had brought me a t-shirt to sign the t-shirt at the end of the year. And
Aw.
I lived about 6 blocks from the school. And I think a lot of the kids knew where I lived. They didn't like take advantage of it, but I said, "You need anything over the summer, let me know." And then that summer of 2008 kind of went by, and a little bit later that summer, I got a call from social worker because
Mhm.
Demi had become, like, I guess, in the care of the state at the time.
Okay.
And she was told, if we can't pinpoint any family members to place you with, so unless you can
Or the
think of
ones that were
someone.
located, like it was to the point where I didn't have any like reliable family members.
Sure. Gotcha.
Nobody that could.
Yep. No one that was safe for you to be staying with.
Yeah, and I think they went through. I think my caseworker straight up was like, "Is there anybody?" And I remember
Right.
Stacey saying, like, "If you need anything," and she's talking about
Uh-huh.
like, some petty cash or something. And I remember her saying, like, "If you need anything, let me know." And in that moment, when my sorry, I get a little emotional.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
In that moment when my caseworker had asked me, like, "Can you think of like anybody?" And like I was like
Mhm.
embarrassed, like this is my teacher, like
Right.
and I was like, Miss Glemboski. And they were like, who's that? And so they called the school, and I think the school
They
counselor.
called I think she called me and asked, like, "Can we give them your number?"
Right.
But
Wow.
to people who are thinking about this is gonna sound a little hippy dippy trippy maybe, but, like, when
Bring
the
it on.
caseworker ca prior to the caseworker's call, I had the sense, like, in my mind,
Mhm.
you're going to parent, but you're going to foster parent. And it was just nothing more than an intuitive feeling, to the point that when the caseworker called,
Uh-huh.
I remember being like, this is the call. I knew exactly why she was calling, who she was calling about, and I knew that I was going to say yes.
Wow. That
And
is
I think
so incredible. And was this something that you had felt only after you had met her,
No,
or had you always felt this like a long time ago since you were like young? You just had that feeling.
it was for years prior. I had always been
Wow.
interested in almost like more of the orphan type, like maybe adoption situation.
Uh-huh.
And in our case, Demi came to live as foster. Her mom was working to retain, well, she had her parental rights and she was
Uh-huh.
not giving up her parental rights, but you have to go
Right.
through these steps to earn to have your children back.
Sure.
And she just wasn't making those steps. So we stayed in foster care the whole time. And we were living in
Uh-huh.
the state of Oregon at the time. And
they were
what the
very
caseworker,
lenient with my mother. Like
Uh-huh.
they were
Uh-huh.
super lenient with her. They gave her plenty of time to kind of
Right, right. Let's backtrack a little bit. I just want to clarify. So when you first were in Stacy's class, were you new to that school and that environment as well, or had you been already in that school
um
and
I
she was just new
I
as a
think I
teacher?
was in 7th grade
Okay.
because I don't think
you
was
were
I.
in 6th grade. You came to live with me in 7th grade at 13, but I met you when you were 12.
Right. Um No, I'd grown up in Springfield. I mean, I walked the
Mhm.
20 blocks to go to school. Like, no, I was
Yeah.
very, I was very used to being like thrown to the principal's office. Like
Uh-huh.
everybody knew me as a student. I had an older sister who was often, we live in the same household, so they
Right.
kind of knew what they were getting into with me.
Yeah.
But
Yep, yep. Okay, gotcha. And
she,
so what was different about was it just her willingness to let you just kind of be where you were and
No,
then make a
dude, she was
decision yourself?
desperate. She needed somebody.
I had no leadership and I had no time. Like it was like almost like, oh, you're gonna try to, like it was almost like a fun challenge for me. And like looking back on it, it seems like all kid fun, but I was, I definitely took advantage of a lot of teachers because all they did was send me to the office. They
Right.
didn't, they just were like, all right, go. And Stacey
Right.
was like more of like, she didn't, maybe she did challenge me, but she did it in a way in a language that I could respond to more
Right.
effectively. But I grew up in a household where there was a lot of yelling, a lot of giving up,
Yeah.
a lot of chaos and stuff. And so that's what I kind of just knew how to spread. And with my
Yes.
other teachers, they would just be like, all right. But Stacey was like, hey,
Right.
dude, like, you
Right.
don't
Like
scare
she
me.
was right, like she was expecting something of you and she wasn't just kind of giving up on you and just like, okay, this is the problem, kid. Like just
And
yeah,
she was
that's
fun. Like she liked being a teacher. Like I remember walking
yeah.
in there at 7:30 in the morning. She's like in the hallway. You could hear her down the hallway. She's like, ba-da-ba-ba. Like she would do like little rings and want you to finish the jingle. And all the kids wouldn't do it. And I'd be like, I'm loving it. Like she was just a fun teacher too.
I
She
love
was
it. That's
someone
so
who was
cool.
supposed to be, a leader,
Yeah.
someone that kids look up to. And,
Yeah.
for not having any children, she just knew how to talk to kids. She was
Yep.
just she was my favorite teacher for that. Yeah.
Amazing.
Made
So you
class
get the
fun.
call, you get the call,
Yep.
you already know, and you're just like, you don't even think about it. You just say yes.
It was fast. It happened.
Yes, I'm going to do it. And so then did you have to like get certified to foster like before she came or while she came, or what happened? She
I'm
just came
pretty sure
over
I
one
had to go
day?
through a series of classes,
Mhm.
but since it was August and I was a teacher, I was off and I had a
Uh-huh.
planned vacation back to the East Coast.
Correct.
We had to wait a little bit before she was placed with me, and I think
Uh-huh.
I started taking the classes, but I think they allowed her to come and move in and while I continued the classes. But
Got
I
it.
did have someone come and fully interview me,
Mhm.
inspect our house,
Sure.
and to contribute to that. But the certification process, I did have to go to a lot of parenting classes, and this was like way pre-Zoom. I had to go to all of them in person and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and attend those classes, but I don't remember it conflicting with like needing care for her or worrying about things in the home. And
Mhm.
two things that pop out from that time were that she showed up with two black plastic garbage bags of her possessions.
Mhm.
I remember that.
That's
And I
the old
also,
story that hopefully they're trying to change that, but I think it still exists. It still happens today. It's like put
Yeah.
your stuff in a garbage bag and let's go. It's
I was
really
living in my friend's closet. Like I had two
yeah.
foster homes within, I think, the 10 months. Like I think I was in foster care for 10 months before I was with Stacey. I was in two foster homes prior to that, and I was just used to moving my stuff around anyway. But yeah, there's basically just hauling a blanket and a couple of bags. So
Crazy.
I feel like
That's
one of the first things we did together too was like paint her room like
we went to
neon
the thrift store
green.
before we even went home. We
That's
really
right. I used to have a 1971 Volkswagen van. She hated it. She wanted me to get a real car, but I totally remember that now. We went to the like antique store and picked out one of those like old school wrought iron bed
I
frames.
had that
uh-huh.
thing until a couple of years ago. Like I had it.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And I made her get a dressing table. I was like, "You're gonna want this to do your hair and like put your makeup
Aw.
on and stuff like that." Whatever. I'm stupid. And there was something else I was thinking that I remembered from that time, but it escaped me. We
So
can
you
we can move
had
on.
to you happen to have an extra room. Like you had an extra
Yeah, you
room
know
in the
what? I had
place that
just
you were
gotten my
living in.
first teaching job and I
Yeah.
had just bought a really cute, I think it was like 1,040 square feet, but it
Mhm.
had 3 bedrooms, ample room for us. I had a dog,
Big
so like
Amazing.
yard.
even though I was a single woman and teacher, I had like it was the creation of that kind of family. It sort of
Yeah.
I remember it feeling pretty right. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I think some people when they take on she wasn't a stranger to me obviously, and
Right.
in some cases
Yeah.
when you're considering doing foster care, you're taking on someone you don't know anything about. And I
Yes.
think that my knowing her prior built up some degree of trust, but I also feel like I kind of lucked out because she doesn't steal. I mean, if she went through my stuff, I didn't know, and maybe there was nothing to find.
Yeah.
She wasn't into abusing drugs or alcohol, which
Mhm.
again, that they're teenagers, it happens, but like,
Mhm.
so in those areas, I would say like maybe it was because we had some trust beforehand. We
Mhm.
had some things in our favor. It was really, I think, our biggest struggles were establishing schedule and
Mhm.
expectations,
Mhm.
overcoming anger,
Mhm.
outbursts, controlling temper, and really just like establishing this routine of trust and safety. And maybe
Yeah.
even I would venture to say Demi was very defiant uh, in
Mhm.
her actions and words, and she
Mhm.
struck out with words a lot at the
Mhm.
time. But
Mhm.
she also, I think, probably in the back of her mind, she challenged me so much that it started to feel like if I push hard enough, you'll leave. Like
Mm.
you'll stop caring if I push hard enough. And she
Mhm.
tried her butt
Uh-huh.
off. I will
Uh-huh.
tell you that
Right,
much.
to get you to to stop. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
I didn't know safe love.
Yes.
I was very fearful of being left. And after I had already established a trust and a safety in that person, I don't think I, cognitively thought of that then. But now
Right.
looking back, I can think like I didn't know safe love. I didn't know trust or anything, especially with authority or adult figures. Like everything was just chaos to me. So I think I was
Yep.
fearful of it when it was really the safest place I could be, that I was just like, I need to go back to what I know. I need to go where I'm
Right.
comfortable, where I, like, as crazy as that sounds, like
Mhm.
chaos.
I remember
Yeah.
saying things to you when you would tell me about your previous experience and saying to you, like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but that's not normal
Mm-hmm.
for a family. And it's an outlier that that happened to you. And she would respond to me, it didn't feel abnormal because it was all I knew.
Yeah.
That was normal.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense. It's like what we know is familiar and it's comfortable in that way, regardless of how
Even if it's uncomfortable.
painful or horrible it is. It's like it's still what you know. So that makes perfect sense. Just and especially at that age, you dealing with hormones and dealing with just being that age is difficult enough as it is. So that is, I can imagine that that was a really tough time. And I also just want to point out, so many people are so afraid, particularly of adopting an older child because of what you were saying about like the potential for, tons of baggage and
Well, there was baggage.
possible, abuse and possible, all of the stuff that people are afraid of. And it's like that can happen with your biological kids too, and it does all the time. But B, also, like, I just think it's really important to point out that you weren't into drugs and alcohol. You weren't doing that kind of stuff. And people would a lot of people make the jump automatically. They think that that is what a preteen or a teenage foster child is going to be. Oh, they're going to be a mess
Yeah,
in that
I was
way.
I was around it plenty. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't. I now talking to my biological mother, I like don't
Hmm.
really know her, like as it, it's been years and years and years, but like when I knew my mother, she was, high or drunk or
Hmm.
chaotic. And now I think when, I graduated high school, she came out to visit us. I was super uncomfortable with her being here because like I just felt like I didn't know her because she was sober at the time.
Uh-huh.
She
Yep.
just wanted to be around me and love me, and I was just like, I don't know you. Like it was,
Yeah.
I mean, so get back to what you were saying. No, I didn't want that. I didn't want to, repeat what my mom was. I think I said it to my sister, and I promised each other like we would never. And I'm pretty sure my sister now still
Wow.
use drugs or alcohol.
Right, right. You saw that and you were like, I don't want that to be me. I don't want that to be my
Nope,
life. Wow.
nope.
Great,
And
great to
and
hear.
early on with that, there was still, despite all the chaos, there
Hmm.
was a clear bond between Demi and her biological mom
Uh-huh.
that, I mean, I was never interested in standing between that. I mean, I would
Mm-hmm.
defend her if I needed to, but I really allowed a lot of, all those efforts. And despite that, it's just sometimes choices. We would give her the benefit of the doubt, and
Mm-hmm.
she would still let Demi down. And then sometimes Demi would internalize it, and I would want to talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
and she was like not ready to talk. I had to learn. I really did have to learn her
Mm-hmm.
language because we would fight, and I would be like, we can't sweep this under the rug. We have to talk about it. And
Still struggle. I mean,
she
I don't. You guys can't see me, but I'm like messing with my hands. I still struggle to talk about things like this. Like when it comes to my
Mm.
mom,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, sure. I get
But
that.
there were also times where I feel like, even though Demi's mom never made it to get it back for her, this
Mm-hmm.
goes back to my initial feeling about the whole thing. Like, I sort of felt when Demi moved in, this is it. She's not going to leave. And even though I knew that her mom, maybe that came out wrong, I meant to say, like, she's going to stay with me.
Right.
And even though her mom was making efforts or telling whoever that she was making the efforts.
Uh-huh.
I Once Demi moved in with me, I had the distinct feeling that this was sorry, honey, you're
Going to be
forever home.
forever. Yeah. And what about you, Demi? Did you feel that way or no? Not at all.
I mean, looking back, as Stacey was just talking, I was like, I wonder how I was, what I thought. I
Yeah.
truly, I think, gosh, this could go in a million different directions of like the possibilities of what I was thinking. Like
Right.
I think I think I wanted because, you know, there was, I don't know if I want to skip ahead, but like there was a point where
Sure.
Stacey and I we were separated for a minute. And that was like,
Okay.
I was like, if I can't go back with her, like what's going to happen? Like what's going to
Uh-huh.
happen to me? It did get to a point where, you know, for a kid, I don't think we think about like the long term, but
Mm-hmm.
once that was taken from me, I was like, wait. Like that's
Aha.
when I was like, no, I need her, you know?
Yes. Yes,
So
absolutely. And
I
and
mean,
so
I don't
you
think that's uncommon for people to not really realize what they've got until it's gone.
a
And I
hundred
feel like
percent.
that's an important part of our story. We tried. We had like about a 6-month honeymoon period.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a nice 2-year long stretch of like learning each other, almost 2 years. It was 20 months before we were separated. But
Mm-hmm.
at that time, it got way worse
I
before it got
bet.
better.
I
I think
bet.
what I was thinking was like, well, I should just move on to the next. I didn't really think, like I knew I loved Stacey, and I knew I maybe I thought I didn't deserve, or she didn't deserve what I was, you know, so
Uh-huh.
maybe that's why I pushed her. Like I was
Uh-huh.
like, you're not ready for me. You don't need me. Like I this
Uh-huh.
is not where I come from. We don't match. Like stuff like that. I think that's what was running through my head. And I mean,
Yeah, that makes sense. Were you still calling her Ms. Glembowski? Like Glembowski.
Glambowski. No, she always
Sorry.
called me Stacy. Maybe at
Stacy.
school she
Okay.
called me Miss
I
Glambowski, but
remember we were
Okay.
listening to, I forget, I think we were listening to Tupac while painting my room parrot's feather green.
Oh yeah, I want to hear the neon green story. How did
It
that
was,
happen right at the beginning?
oh yeah. As soon as we bought like a nightstand, the vanity, a mirror, and a bed frame, and I think we had to wait for the bed to be shipped or something. We were in my new room painting, which to me, I remember feeling very overwhelmed. Like I was like, why are we doing all these things for me? Like I've never painted a
Uh-huh.
room before. Like why are we, you know, I got to pick any color, so I picked like the most obnoxious bright green color, and my quilt on my bed was pink and lime green, and it was
Yeah.
just like, you know, I'd never had the opportunities for to make my own space. So
Right.
I remember, you know, we were painting the room, and I was like, so do I call you, like, what do I call you? Do I call you Stacy? Like
Yeah.
Miss G? What do I call you? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think maybe I even
Powerful.
said mom, like, do you want me to call you mom? And she was like, Stacy, you can call me Stacy. I was like,
And
And
so it's
she
always
still
been Stacy, not
Yeah,
mom.
and she still
Okay.
does unless she's talking to her friends about me. If she's
Ah.
talking to her friends about me, she'll say like my mom. But when she's talking to me, and I think I'm in her phone as like,
mother,
mom type person or something
your
like that.
mother with the queen emoji.
Mother with the queen
Aw.
emoji. There you go. But still, and I'm totally, totally comfortable with that. Like that,
Yeah.
I've never needed her to call me mom because
I think I
the
have
feeling is there. I don't
Yeah.
care about the name. The
Sure.
feeling is
Gotcha.
there.
that's what I want to echo is the
Yeah.
feelings there, but I think I associate mom with my mother, and
Sure.
that kind of doesn't have a positive association. If I,
Yeah. I totally get that.
you know,
100%. And I think it's whatever works. And I
I
think
think
it's
I tried
so
to call my own mother Michelle once, and she was like, "Don't you?" So I've never even called her by her name. She's just
right.
mom, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So were you in touch with your siblings? You said you had a sister. Were there other siblings also in the picture or
Not in this picture. No,
okay.
I have two other siblings that are the same father, but my older
Okay.
sibling that I keep talking about was my sister. She was same. We grew up together. She was my
Uh-huh.
same mother, same father. So
Sure. I'm just wondering what happened with her, to her. Where did she go? What?
That's a really good and relevant question, I think.
Uh-huh.
especially to this, you know, what, you know, all this. She I know she bounced from several homes, like group
Mhm.
girl homes, and
Mhm.
I stayed at a place while Stacey was on the East Coast.
Okay.
I stayed with her, and
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's a reason that we weren't placed together. We fought the whole time. Like
Uh-huh. How much older is she than you?
she's 15 months older than me, so
Oh,
she's
wow. So you guys
30.
are almost the same age.
And
Yeah.
I don't think she was at our same middle school because I didn't know her at the
She went to
time.
an
Okay.
alternative school. I don't know if that's a real phrase, but
It
Okay.
is in Oregon.
it is in Oregon. We even worse school than the actual general public schools of Oregon.
Right, right,
Springfield.
right.
But she was never placed with Stacey. There were several times where we were around all three of us, but
Mhm.
um,
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you, Stacey, think like, God, she has a sister too, and like, did they ask you like, would you be willing to take on, or no, because you guys didn't get along anyway, that they didn't, the state didn't
I
think of placing you together?
I don't think so. I guess the short answer is they never asked me. I
Okay.
They
really,
didn't want us
I think I would have
Mm-hmm.
had a heart for Desiree if they had asked me,
Mm-hmm.
but I also knew that they didn't really get along. It didn't seem to me, I guess in my foggy memory, that
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to live together at the
Okay.
time. Um, Desiree was that much older that the couple of times that I was like, "Let's get together with your sister and go out to dinner." And I
Mm-hmm.
would be like, "Why don't we put our phones away at the table at Taco Bell?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
her sister really met my suggestion with a ton of defiance and
Uh-huh.
like, "You're not my mom, like you can't tell me what to do." And
Sure.
I just, to be honest, like I had a connection with Demi in class and then later on, and I didn't have that same kind of connection with Desiree, but I would have tried, but no
Sure.
one ever asked. It was
Right.
I don't think I think I thought that they didn't want to live together.
and we lived together for that month where you were here and I was waiting for you to come back and we were like, no, this isn't gonna work. Like we
Mhm.
like, usually,
Interesting.
I think siblings are supposed to be placed together, but we were, pre-adolescent, or what is it? We were preteens,
Preteens.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
we it just
It
wasn't.
wasn't a good match. Yeah, it's interesting because now it's all about keeping the biological family together, and many times that's a wonderful wonderful thing. Most times I would say probably it ends up being, but
Mm.
sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And now they've really swung in the direction of no matter what it has to be, and even with the foster parents, like it has to be somebody by blood related, even if that person isn't necessarily the best choice for safety and health and all of that stuff. So it's
To be honest, I think it was the best decision for us,
mm-hmm,
for 2 reasons. One, at 13 and 15, and me at 31,
mm,
if they decided to, they probably could have ganged up pretty successfully on me.
mm-hmm.
And but then I also think, uh, it's just you get pulled in your own direction, I think, and, Desiree at 15 at the time was very independent. She had
Mm-hmm.
a mind of her own. She sort of had, I think, her path set in her mind. And to be honest, our story, I regret it sometimes because if I
Mm-hmm.
could have helped, I
Mm-hmm.
think that Demi's story ended up a lot more traditional family
Uh-huh.
than Desiree's did.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if that's what she wanted or didn't want, or if she's happy with the way things turned out. But
Right.
Demi ended up with a lot more structure moving
Well,
forward,
I
but she
mean,
was younger.
by the time you and I ended up living together, I had already been in the system for almost a year. And I think maybe that's why it wasn't offered. Maybe she was comfortable whatever location she, because I mean, when we had separated from my mother was literally like, "Hey, where I'm going, you can't come. So find
Mm-hmm.
somewhere to go." So we both called our friends, and then we had separated from that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had started the foster process with the friend, and then she had moved again, and then they had started the process. Maybe that's why it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's why we weren't placed together. We'd already kind of separated and preferred it. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think maybe she
Uh,
thought she was going someplace that would work when she got placed that time, but then I feel like she
mm-hmm.
bounced around a little bit after that.
She did quite a few times after that.
And are you still in touch with her today?
Uh, well, his name is Silas now, and he lives
Okay.
in Ohio.
Okay.
And he does have a son who lives there as well. And I think it is important to, when I was talking about him when we were children, to refer to him
Aha.
as my sister, as a female, and,
Sure.
and as Desiree. But I mean, he
Uh-huh.
started to, not disassociate from Desiree a while ago. But yeah,
Okay.
he's got his own, life going on in Ohio,
Uh-huh.
and he's getting his top surgery this month. So I'm pretty sure
Okay.
my
Oh,
biological brother's going
good.
up to visit this week for that. So yeah, I
Wow.
mean, he's got his family and his own life and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we did speak or talk to each other or see each other, it would be very,
Yeah.
we will always have that sibling connection,
Sure.
but we're just like, we respect each other for that. That's it.
Right.
You know, like we don't
Yeah,
have
like
this longing of
you don't
siblings.
have to be in each other's lives actively to respect each other and love each other from afar,
Right.
basically, is what I'm
Right.
hearing. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's
That
great.
works for us.
Sure, sure. And your biological mom, you're still in touch with as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
She checks in here and there, and
Yep,
yeah, she's going to visit my brother this week for the top
yep.
surgery, help take care of him. So she's, I mean, now that my brother and I both have children, she's actively pursuing relationships with us. But
Yeah,
She
yeah,
sends care
yeah.
packages
she
for
does. She
Oh,
for
sends
Demi's
my,
son.
that's nice.
yeah.
That's really nice. And Stacey, are you like on good terms with?
Totally.
Yeah.
When Demi mentioned that her mom came for Demi's high school graduation, and we
Uh-huh.
lived in New Jersey at that time because so at one point in our relationship we moved from Oregon to New Jersey.
Right. I want to get
And
to that. Yeah, yeah.
and when Demi's mom came to visit, like Demi said, she could take it to a certain point, and then Demi totally was like, "Stacey, hang out with my mom." And I wanted to. Like, we get along very well. She's always been very
That's another
safe.
thing I think we had going for us, why our process was so, like, my mom really admired Stacey. Like,
She's
Uh-huh.
always been very nice and kind and
Oh, that's so
respectful to me.
great.
We've
yes,
never
That's
stepped on each other's toes. There's never been a jealousy thing that sometimes happens with
yeah.
women, and like
right.
it's always been really cool. And when we were tasked with hanging out together, we chummed up. Like, it was cool.
Yeah,
Wow, that's so amazing. Just to get like really woo-woo for a second, because I know you guys can go there. You know, perhaps, I mean, I truly believe like this was like this was meant to be, right? And so we
totally.
don't always like what things start out as and how they evolve. Sometimes it evolves into something like it goes where it's supposed to go sometimes. And
Mhm.
It's how
I
it's
just,
always felt
yeah,
from
Water
yeah,
first.
flows downhill.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really just how it's always felt with us. I mean, at least
Hmm.
for me.
Right.
That's Stacey's my, you know, she's
Your
my
soul
family.
mama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that. Let's go back to the separation. So you guys had been living together. There was the honeymoon period for 6 months or whatever it was. Then there was the very difficult 20-month period of just challenges and dealing with the baggage and unpacking things and establishing a rhythm and all of that, which makes perfect sense. What happened after that?
You want to go first? Me? From my perspective, during that 20 months, as you're growing comfortable, like it was from the smallest thing of, we're going to eat at 5, you'll be here. And she's like, why do we need to eat together? You know, establishing
Hmm.
small routines like that. But then it was just starting like the cell phone era. And I was trying to impart, like, if I'm going to provide you with a cell phone while you're
Hmm.
in 7th, 8th, your first freshman year, ninth
Yeah.
grade, like,
God.
then you need to pay attention to your grades. I don't need A's, I need C's.
Yeah.
You need to earn C's in order for me to provide that cell phone.
Hmm.
And Demi, I mean, sometimes to my face and sometimes not, was really like, it's going to be funny to watch you try and make me do that, you know? And so that defiant streak that I was talking about earlier, she used words to hurt at the time. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying this to hurt you, honey. I'm totally over it. But like,
I'm
there were a lot of times where I would, you know, my family lived on the East Coast, where I would call them up, and Demi had just said something to me like, you're like not even a real parent. So it's really funny watching you try to parent me, because
Hmm.
you don't know what you're doing and you're just like pretending, and you think you know what you're doing. So she's like, but nice try. You're not even a real parent. And I get that. Like, but she would always go for like what she thought would hurt me the most with
I'm
her
so
Sure.
words.
embarrassed to
Yeah.
hear that.
Oh, it's fine, honey. I mean, like,
That's
kids who
what
aren't
kids do.
foster kids do that.
Exactly.
You
Kids
know,
do that. And
they tell their parents they hate them, and they
oh
say
God.
like it's impossible, and they just fight back with them. And
By the way, I was like incredibly rebellious and like, oh my God. I mean, some of the things I said. I remember telling my parents in my senior year of high school, like, there is nothing that you can do or say that's going to make me do what you want me to do. I'm going to do
yeah.
exactly what I want to do, no matter what.
Mhm.
Like, I was that defiant. So, like, I get it.
I'm
I
hearing
love your
about it now.
spirit.
it's
Yeah,
like exhausting. I'm like, hey, geez,
I
I put
know.
so much energy into that. But like kids, I guess, just got that expendable energy. They can
I
just
know.
exhaust that and use
Mm.
it. And
I know. And there's anger, right? Like, so I have anger. I had trauma in my childhood as well. So, like, I can really not, it's not the same, but I can relate to this anger deep inside that
Yes, and there
still to this
that
day comes out. I
that
have
was
it. I
my
just
the
have it.
biggest thing I noticed with her is that we had required counseling appointments, and
Mm-hmm.
I could see, like, Demi was very quick to anger and very, very, you could tell that she was holding on to a lot of anger, and for good reason. But
Sure.
I would take her to the counseling appointment, drag her to the counseling appointments that she did not want to go to. She would, I know this sounds like a TV sitcom, she would sit there for an hour and say nothing and be
Mm.
like, this and then at the end she'd be like, to the counselor, she would be like, did you have fun? Because this is what's going to be like next week if she gets me back here next week too, which I would get her back there next week. And so when we lived in Oregon, I would say that counseling was a wash. I dragged her there
Mm-hmm.
kicking and screaming. I don't even remember our counselors' names. I don't
Mm.
remember anything about it, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a requirement of the foster
Right.
care
You
to
had to
have
do it.
her like talk it out with a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we tried, but it was tough. And so
Sure.
that was part of our first 20 months, which 20 months doesn't sound like a lot, but it is almost 2 years. And you
Yeah.
really do form a connection and a bond, even if you're fighting the whole time
Sure.
in that time. And so the things that I remember from
like,
that were that there were times where Demi would start to get boyfriends and she would tell me about the different boyfriends. Of course, I never approved ever, but I wasn't super vocal about that. I just
Mm-hmm.
like would teach her to respect herself and
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. But
Yeah.
there were a lot of times where I would say, you can't go out tonight, and you would open up her bedroom door to the curtain blowing in the breeze. And I
Mm.
don't even remember sometimes how I was tipped off to where she was. I don't know, but I specifically remember one time driving to this park because she had run away and I knew that she was there. She was out when she shouldn't be. And I remember rolling up in my car, and I hope you don't remember this differently, but I felt like a superhero that day. So I have to tell it from my perspective.
yeah.
But I rolled up in the car and she was there with her little boyfriend swinging on the swings or something like that. And I rolled the window down and I said to her, no one's forcing us to be together. You're making a choice right now that I have to tell the caseworker about. And
Mm-hmm.
you're making this choice and it's going to make it harder for us. So, like, you need to get in the car right now and we're going home. And then I'm like, I wonder if this is going to work. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it worked, but she was
It
like,
worked. You got in the
I'll see
car.
you later, to her boyfriend. She saunters over the car at like 0.1 miles per hour, like as slow as possible, gets in the car, and I drove her home. I don't think we said a word. I think we got back home. She went into her room. And so like there were times where she was defiant, but there was times where she would reluctantly listen. And
Yep.
then there were times where she would slam the door and I would take the door off the hinges and she would be like, I need my privacy, like, and
Yep.
we would leave it off until she earned it back, or like, and
Mm-hmm.
then it just, at the end of the 20 months for us, to my memory, what
Mm-hmm.
it came down to is we got in a fight over something I cannot remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it getting physical. Like she chucked her Converse sneaker at me and it hit
Mm-hmm.
me. And then it sort of escalated physically to where I can remember attempting to restrain her, like having my
Okay.
arm like this. And the only reason I
Mm-hmm.
remember this is because she freaking bit me, like
Mm.
on the arm, to get me to let her go.
Oof.
And
Yep.
I mean, granted, this was out of control. Parents in any situation have the opportunity to react or not react. And it's very difficult not to react. And I think there were a lot of times where I remember teaching myself not to engage, because as soon as you engage, she would start to use the things that I said
Mm.
against me and turn blame around on me as if the things that were happening were because of me and not
Right.
because of her. It's all like very child psychology normal. But
Right.
in this particular case, our culmination really was almost like a physical altercation, to where
Okay.
I had bruises, and then I think she just left
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know where she went. Of course, the caseworker checks in. Like, it was obligation. I didn't want to tell on her. I was kind of torn because I didn't want
Yeah.
to tell on her. I didn't want her to go anywhere. I knew it was just a fight,
Right.
but I also had to tell the caseworker what happened.
Sure.
And I can distinctly remember the caseworker's words to me. Her name was Deb. Wasn't the caseworker's name Deb?
Deb.
She was kind of like
Oh,
she was a
Deb,
little
I
crusty,
forgot
you know,
that.
she was like hardened by the social care system. Demi was never her
Yep.
easiest kid.
Yep.
She looked me in the face and said, "Stacey, you're involved with Demi in a cycle of abuse that will continue, and we're going to separate you." And during
Oof.
that, they removed her from my home. I think it was like, well, you had taken a trip to see your half brother in California, and this
What?
happened like right after you came back. And so they decided to remove her, but then they also put us on an absolutely no contact order. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to call her.
Whoa.
I wasn't allowed to check in. I
That's
wasn't allowed
insane.
to
I'm
talk
sorry.
to
It
her
was
at
like
all.
it was like the other person died.
There was real grief
It
for me
was
too.
sudden and it was silent. And I
Why
was
would they
faced with
think that
people
that
I
would
don't
be
know.
that's just insanity. Wow.
It
And
was
That's
weird.
I
I remember thinking it was weird.
yeah,
yeah.
and I knew that she was leaving. She was moving to Pennsylvania,
Well,
New Jersey, the East Coast.
I think that this was in like about March of 2010
Mhm.
when she was removed. My mom had passed away in
January.
January of 2010. So it had been on my mind to return to the East Coast, to be my
Mhm.
brother's sister again, to be my
Mhm.
father's
Mhm.
daughter again, just to be like closer to family.
Sure.
And I had it in my mind that I was going to ask if we could go. And then she was removed from my house in March, and she was gone for 10 weeks. And
Oh,
I made the decision to resign from my teaching job and move myself back to the East Coast. So I said, "Look, I'm leaving. I haven't talked to her, and we're like
yeah.
family. Like, let me say goodbye." And
Yeah.
so the caseworker then said to me, "It's not really working out. Would you be interested in taking her back?" And I said, "Well, I'll take her back, but she's going to New Jersey with me."
Wow.
And so she basically came back at the end of June, and we got in the car and left, what, 5 days later? And we had a
Wow.
ton of repair to do. It was a little, I will say, awkward at first,
Yeah, I bet.
getting back together. It was it was like, "What are you gonna do? How do you really feel?" We never talked about what happened. We hadn't talked to each other at all, like, almost since that explosive incident. And
Wow.
and then
That
I
is
was like, "Well, now you're
mind-boggling.
moving to New Jersey." And she had just, sorry, honey, I'm gonna add this one in there because it's one of my favorite parts of the story, finished what I call her first freshman year, in
Okay.
which she attended school but got
Yes.
literally no freshman year credits. Not
0.5.
even
I
chorus. Nope.
passed gym.
Maybe.
Harsh
Maybe
mark
I'm leaving that out.
in
But
Okay.
so
Oregon, you can get D's.
when we moved to New Jersey, it was my job to find a new job, and I
Uh-huh.
had rented a house and enrolled her in school in New Jersey, and for all the efforts that she was starting freshman year again, so she actually did
Uh-huh.
like a second freshman year,
Sure.
um,
Sure.
and uh, I remember in that year as we were patching things up, and we had dogs, and I believe our dogs helped bond us
One
because
of the
Uh-huh.
actually
dogs
a
was
part we left out of the story was that shortly after Demi's mom couldn't care for Demi anymore, she asked us to take their dog too. And
Aw.
Demi's dog, Nikita, was the perfect dog. And she was
Mm,
so good for Demi to have the dog that she loved with us, and she got
I
along
bet.
best friends with the dog I already had.
immediately they were best friends. They didn't even
Aw.
sniff each other's
And
butts. They were
I
just
really feel like there's dog therapy going on. Like
Oh,
those 2
yeah.
yeah.
dogs really helped us like
I
bond.
swear,
And
Did
it
you
was just
have the
all
dog
hate.
the whole time when she was
I
gone? Like,
I
did
had
you
my did I have
or did
Nikita
she
while you were
take the
Had
gone?
to have
dog?
had Nikita. I didn't
I
take her.
had to have. Yeah. No, I think
Okay.
I kept the dog when she was gone.
Okay.
Well, by that
Okay.
point, I mean, that was my dog. I loved that dog so much. Like,
Dude, did my mother know that we were separated? Did you have any, or was she in
I
prison at
can't
the time?
remember.
She might have
But
been
it wouldn't have, I don't think it would have made a difference. I can't
right.
remember though.
Just curious.
During those 10 weeks, Demi, were you with another foster family or like where were you? What was happening during those 10 weeks?
I was in another home. I didn't know these people. Apparently, they're like my second cousins by marriage or something. And
Okay.
I mean, as Stacey said, I gave them 10 weeks of, what I gave Stacey, and they
Yep.
couldn't. I think that's another way to just prove how unconditional Stacey's love goes, because
Yeah.
she gave me 20 months of that, and I could only give them 10 weeks before they were like, she needs to get out, like she needs to
Uh-huh.
leave, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I
Uh-huh.
was by no means easy. I was,
Right.
I mean, you've heard it, but like, you know, it's just
Yeah.
how far
Yeah.
Stacey's love went. I
Yep.
think truly what did it for
And
us.
were you so relieved when you finally came back? Like, even if there was stuff and whatever, like deep inside, were you just so
I was
relieved?
leaving my childhood home. All my friends were my family. I remember waving from
Mm.
the rear view like a movie, like being like I knew that I was leaving my friends, but I knew I was leaving with Stacey, and I knew that
Yeah.
that was what I needed, what I wanted, and
Right.
so yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
I do remember it being very emotional for her leaving her friends.
I
And to be
bet.
honest, I doubt I've ever even told her this. I was nervous. I
Mm-hmm.
was nervous. I knew that I wanted her to be with me. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even hesitate when they were like, "Will you take her back?" I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yes, of course."
Mm-hmm.
But I was nervous for what was ahead. And really, even when we moved back to New Jersey, the success stories are with her, the little
Mm-hmm.
successes that we made
Mm-hmm.
are almost as common as, I mean, we got in a ton of fights when she was in high school, a
Mm-hmm.
ton. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that helped Demi, I think, was in Oregon, the conversation was, what are you going to do after high school? And in New Jersey, the conversation was, what college are you going to? And
Yeah.
so
Mm.
even as early as freshman year, it was like her friends would be like, your mom lets you get C's? Like, I have to be on the honor roll every year. And
Yeah, there was definitely like a social anxiety amongst grades here. It was a completely different environment than
completely
Oregon.
different.
That was
Wow.
probably the only real culture shock I had. Like people didn't
Really?
scare me. Yeah. People don't scare me. It was like fitting in. Like I needed
Uh-huh.
to fit in, and kids, no kids failed here. Like not even, you know, the kids that you would think would. No,
Right.
not an option.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
So you went to a really good school district, obviously, when you did you continue teaching, Stacey, or did you just
I
forget and you were
did.
just
I
like, I'm
found a
done?
teaching job.
Okay.
It took me a couple months, and I finally found a permanent teaching job in
Mm.
Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, the home of the Real
Okay.
Housewives.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
that's right.
Wow.
But we
And
lived in an area as well where it was a pretty affluent, like all of her, I feel like a lot of her friends, parents, and families, a lot of people have money. The town
mm-hmm.
where the Jonas Brothers grew up,
Yeah.
Ah,
Denville.
gotcha.
Well,
Wow.
Jim's brother's wife, but yes.
Okay, gotcha. And how did your family, Stacey, receive Demi? And was it difficult? Was it easy? Just coming back and like, okay, I have this kid. This is my kid, my
I want to
kid.
talk about that too, but you go
Yeah,
first.
I don't
I
even
would
want
love
to
to hear
answer
about it.
because to me,
Okay.
I'm like, they love me. So they were like, what you want to do. If you love her, we
Yes,
love her. But I think her answer is probably going to be better.
I would love
There
to hear it.
was literally like, I mean, everything with all like, you know, like Christmas was overwhelming. Like I'm so
Uh-huh.
used to my mom would hand me $100 and tell me to go to Walmart, and I was like, okay, so you had the money, but you didn't have the time, you know? So
Yeah.
I remember Christmas to me, they were handing me gifts, and there was just like, I mean, because we had visited before we moved here,
Right.
but I just remember Christmas Day, it was just like, who are these all for? These are all real gifts. These aren't like pretend, like
Right.
staged.
Like
It
just
was,
the boxes.
and the food and the energy and like just, I remember for the first time I met them, we flew out. I flew for the first time ever on an
Mhm.
airplane on my birthday. We went to a Rockettes show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We they had a birthday cake ready for me like when we walked in the door. Like there was literally no
Oh,
awkwardness. They were so excited. They were
that
so
is
excited for
so
Stacey.
sweet. I
Yeah,
love
like
that.
it was just another thing that was like, this is the universe telling us that this is, like, they were my family immediately.
Yes,
Hmm. Hmm.
unconditional love. That is
Hmm.
so beautiful. I'll just share with you when I brought Izzy, 3 months after we had started fostering my daughter Izzy, who's now 7. She was only 3 months old, and we had to go back for a wedding. And I remember being really nervous about how, because live in LA, but all my family's on the East Coast, about like, are they going to accept her, and like how are they going to accept her, and I thought that they would, but like I didn't know, and I felt really kind of nervous about that. Like they better accept her and just be like super loving, and like I remember having my guard up in that way. And I remember being there, and they just welcomed her with open arms, like as if she was my child already, and it was just
She
so beautiful.
was.
Such
Yeah.
a
She
relief.
Yeah.
was your
On
child.
on all, yeah, and on all parts. It's just such a relief because that's a
Yeah.
natural, fear to have.
Oh,
Yeah.
but you know what? Something that might be important, especially for people who are establishing this connection with their
Yes.
families and their foster kid. I did make a wall of pictures at my and Demi's house
Family
in
tree.
Oregon that had the faces of all the people she was going to meet. And I was
Yes.
like,
Good
this
idea.
is my aunt, these are my cousins, that's my mom, my dad, my brothers, so
Yep.
that she had a visual of who they all were. And then it was art on our wall in our house too. It was like our family pictures wall. So she knew who everyone was as she was meeting them. And I do think that helped.
Yes, absolutely. And then, point of clarification, when you moved to New Jersey, did the state of Oregon just say, okay, like you're moving to New Jersey, or did you have to switch over to New Jersey foster care, or like how did
Yes.
that
It
work?
was like a dual thing, right? Like New Jersey and Oregon were like my mom and dad.
Uh-huh.
I didn't once we got to New Jersey, they transferred our case to New Jersey's social care system, and just as a
Uh-huh.
side note, the healthcare and the amount of attention that we got was way better in Oregon.
Really?
When we moved to New Jersey,
Common there.
I really liked our New
Wow.
Jersey caseworker, and I felt like she cared about us, and that was cool, but we were her outliers because she was navigating. She wasn't what she called a New Jersey kid. She was an Oregon kid. So it
Oh.
was sort of like New Jersey was watching an Oregon kid on their caseload, but we were under
Uh-huh.
all of the New Jersey rules. So
But
we were
there was
playing by
also, I'm
New Jersey
sorry,
rules.
in New Jersey, you are out of, they foster, what do they call it? The foster out system. They remove you from their system by 18. And I
Okay.
was going to be 19 by the time I graduated college, and in
Ah.
Oregon it's 21.
That's right. Yeah,
Ah,
that too.
interesting.
So
Mhm.
their whole system, because it's more common in Oregon, so they have more resources, they have more knowledge, they have
Huh.
more. Yeah, so in Oregon, it was a lot more like not tedious, but it was a lot more
Oh
hands-on. So
man,
I remember that was a complaint that our foster, what is she named? Our
Samantha.
caseworker Samantha. I remember she struggled with having to communicate with Oregon so much with us.
Uh-huh.
And maybe
Uh-huh.
that's what I don't remember, that our caseworker was the one that communicated with Oregon, not me. I just
Yes,
communicated with our New Jersey
it was like a
caseworker.
whole different workload for her. Like
Uh-huh.
yeah,
But
Oh,
from
I
there on
bet.
out, I
Yeah.
didn't have to do any continuing parenting classes.
Ah,
They
okay.
transferred my home, certification. Like
Uh-huh.
I just had to check in with Sam. I think we met once a month or something like that. And then
Got
we
it.
also had to continue to go to counseling. And I can't
Uh-huh.
remember how many we went through, but we finally landed on a gal that it took some chipping through the ice, but
Uh-huh.
that Demi was really able to open up with. I didn't attend the sessions with her, so
Mm-hmm.
she was able to talk about me while she was at the sessions.
Right.
Rhoda was her name.
Rhoda,
Rhoda.
that was her
Nice.
name.
Mm.
God, a
Rhoda,
good therapist is like, I mean, there's nothing like it.
it's
A
critical.
lifesaver. And it's so hard to find. It's like really, it's like dating,
Especially for
right?
her.
Like you got to go through like a lot before you find the right therapist for you. Yeah.
Depending on your insurance too, man, it is a mess
Yes.
out there for
100%.
therapy. And I feel like mental health is now becoming so not mainstream, but like people are paying more attention to it and acknowledging it as it being like a real like thing that you can carry all the time. And
Yeah.
but there's just not enough, they could go
Yeah.
on about that all day.
Right. So did you ever end up officially adopting, or did it just sort of like you aged out of the system and then that was it?
Even Oregon called it permanent foster care.
Which is
They and
adoption.
Oregon used to tell me, we don't like to do the adoption proceedings for teenagers because then they change their minds and they decide they don't want to be
Oh.
adopted by that family anymore. And so they've
Huh.
spent money and proceedings and time on this, and then teenage kids change their mind or they ditch or whatever. And so
Okay.
for Oregon, it was always, you're going to be on permanent foster care. And once we got to New Jersey, I remember our caseworker Samantha was always like, why didn't you adopt? Why aren't you her
Hmm.
guardian? Why didn't you do any of this? And we're like, we
Hmm.
don't care.
Right.
We've never really needed the piece of paper. And I joked
I
with
don't
Demi
believe in
maybe a week or two
legalness.
ago that I was
Hmm.
like, we actually have like no real legal connection to each other, right? Like you
Wow.
could be a stranger to me
Right.
just as easily as I could call you my daughter. Like, but I can't
Right.
prove it.
And do you ever feel like there's nothing there for either of you that feels like that was something that you wanted? Did it? I mean, I'm just wondering, or you like
I think
I'd
our
love her the same either way. I don't need
Definitely, and
it.
I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying, like, I'm just wondering if there was anything there, maybe from Demi, about like, would you want to be, or was it kind of like, no, I have a biological mom, and like I'm good. And
No,
how did you?
I think it was just not something I really ever thought about. Stacey was just always going to be it for me. It
Yep,
didn't. We didn't need,
yep,
like we didn't need all of that stuff. We knew who we were to each other.
right, right.
And I remember when I had graduated high school for the first time ever. Like she comes into my room and she's like, "Hey, so I, met a guy who I had already met. I had already known that they were dating." She was like, "He's moving to Florida, like, and I think I'm gonna go too." And I was like, I remember looking at her. I was like, "Why are you telling this? Like, I can't go. Like, are you breaking up with me?" For the first
Oh
time ever, I
no.
was like, "Are you still my mom?"
You were
Oh
in community college at that time, I thought. Weren't
No,
you?
it was right. It was in that summer. Literally, I had graduated high school. I remember I had started. It might have been like my spring semester then. Like I might have done like a winter semester at
wow,
I almost said Lane County, um, at county. So
wow. So what happened? Did you move? Did you move to Florida and you stayed in
Yeah.
Jersey?
When she was 21, I think I moved to Florida, right?
Okay.
20? 20 or
20.
so?
And you
But
decided
she
you
was
wanted to
ready.
stay.
She was ready to move out. We were
Mm-hmm.
getting along like pretty well. I mean, I guess if there were a story to be told through high school, it's that we had all the typical challenges, and I was also, I'm a little bit more old school, so I was trying to get her, like I made her get a job when she was a sophomore in high school at a shoe
Mm-hmm.
store, because I said, if you want a car, we'll get you a car, but you have to pay the insurance. And like
Sure.
I was trying to teach her how to make her own doctor's appointments, and like
Mm-hmm.
teach her how to like be able to take care of herself. But I was up against parents who were doing that for their kids and paying
Mm.
for everything. So if there was a lot of anger between us at that point, it was like, but this friend's parent bought her a car and pays the insurance, and how am I supposed to
Uh-huh.
work a job and get the grades you want me to in high school? And so there was a lot of just like, you're bothering me, you're annoying kind of energy all throughout high school, and we fought a lot.
Yeah.
We and I was also, she never wanted to bring her friends to our house because I annoyed her, so she
Mm-hmm.
assumed like that I was going to not welcome her friends or be annoying to her friends, so she would always go and spend the time at her friends or boyfriend's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would spend a lot of time out of the house. And so then when she would come back, sometimes we would do things together, sometimes we wouldn't, sometimes we would have
Mm-hmm.
to go shopping. Like we were still very dedicated to each other, and we knew that we both needed each other, but we had those high school struggles.
Sure.
So by the time I had met someone that I was very serious about, who she really liked too, like she
Mm-hmm.
approved of him, and we talked about moving, it was very natural. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she jokes like, "You're leaving me, haha," but I wouldn't have left if I felt like she still
Right.
needed me.
Yeah.
But she
I
was
get that.
20. I mean, it was
Right.
2015.
She
That
was an
makes you
adult, and
21.
yeah.
I didn't move till 2015. So like she was old enough
Right.
to be on her own. She knew she had my
Sure.
support. She had a boyfriend she wanted to move in with. So like, to be clear, I didn't ditch her.
I
No.
totally get it. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So let's cut to today. So you're a mom now, Demi, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
How many children do you have? How old are they? What's happening with that?
I have one little boy. He's going to be 2 in September. His name's
Oh,
Connor. He's amazing.
He's
Um,
amazing.
congratulations.
he really is. He's such a whiz.
Oh.
Um, and I've realized I get emotional so much now.
Yeah,
I
no, of
was never
course.
like this before. And now that I have my own kid, and even
Mhm.
hearing Stacey talk about like the things that I said to her, I'm like, oh goodness, like as a mom, like, geez, the heartbreak that must, you know,
Right.
feel to
Yep.
hear those things from your
Yep.
kid is, So now that I have a kid, I'm realizing I'm confronted a lot with my childhood traumas
Sure.
daily,
I bet. Yeah.
daily, and confusion and anger with my mother, and
Uh-huh.
I'm working through a lot of that stuff. I mean, I see a therapist now
Yep.
for it. So
Willingly.
yeah, myself. I see her every Tuesday night after Connor goes to bed. But
That's great.
it's
Good for you.
yeah, It's definitely a challenge, and I'm remembering a lot more about my childhood that I realized I blacked out quite a lot.
Uh-huh.
Um, and just confronting a lot of things that I'm like, maybe my mom felt like this. Like it just, it's interesting, it's humbling, and it's just feels really important. It just,
Yeah.
it's great. And
That's so well said, because it's so true. When you become a parent, like, it really, really changes perspective. It just makes you see things in such a different way. And regardless of how difficult, this, I'll speak for myself, regardless of how difficult my childhood was in some ways, I really had a lot more understanding and compassion once I became a parent, because I was just like, this is not easy. And you have the tools you have, and that's all you have. And things were different when my mom had the tools that she had, and she did the best that she could with what she had. So I totally get that.
but I
And
find a little bit of comfort in that is being like I'm still my mother's daughter, but I parent the way Stacey parented. So that's my pulling
yes,
back and forth too. Is like
Mhm.
yes,
I'm biologically my mother's daughter, and I have, I can see sometimes, getting frustrated. My mother, wasn't a big explosive, abusive person. She just abused drugs and stuff, which I don't
right,
do. But I can, I saw my mom hurt a lot. I
yeah,
saw her just hurt a lot, and I'm like, I'm not that I'm hurting a lot, but I have maybe, feelings, and I'm like, maybe my mom felt like this.
yep,
But then I turn around and parent the way Stacey did, and Stacey did it so gracefully and so patient and gentle parenting. She
mm-hmm.
offered different alternatives, and she, gave space and just, so that's like the thing that I'm going through right now with, going through the system and being a parent myself is it's bizarre. It's such a trip.
Yeah, it is. And like, the other thing I love about it is that you get to do things again, right? Like, in a different
Yes.
way, right? So, like,
You get to save your inner child, you know?
yeah, yeah, and, like, I don't know about you, but, like, for me, I've been really dialoguing with my inner child, like, so much since I became a parent, because that little girl is always still there. She's there, and
Yeah.
the defiant teenager is still there,
I
and I'm
never
like,
thought of
"Okay."
it
Yeah,
either.
like,
I never felt it before, and now it's
right.
like it feels like I'm mourning my childhood, and
Yep.
I'm healing her too, so
100%. And
You
that's
know,
so
she
beautiful, because you're
even
mothering yourself, and that's amazing.
yes, that's what
she has
exactly feels
really
Mhm.
a real clear path of growth over the years. Like, even as the early years, the tough, the younger adolescent-y, like early preteens in Oregon. Then once we moved, she kind of went through the stages of the middle teen years, and then we started, I mean, 15, 16, 17 were tough. We fought a
Mhm.
lot. We disagreed a lot.
Mhm.
We but we like worked through it. We knew we were always going to be there for each other. As she got 18, 19, she started, I mean, we didn't really start to get really close in the way that we are now, where like all the fighting's really behind us. We still annoy each other
Mhm.
occasionally, but it's like, you're annoying, whatever, like everybody
Right.
does. But
Right.
she's shown like real stages of personal growth that is continuing now, to where, I mean, I can look back to when she was 12 and
Mhm.
13 and
Mhm.
see like almost like a phoenix situation, where
Yeah.
she really shed a lot of her old stuff and is really coming into being the adult and the mom that she is now, to the point
Yeah.
that I that's why I just feel like she is sort of what you hope you get out of the process of the foster care system, because
thanks to
there
you.
was so much reluctance and
100%. Yeah.
so much like hesitation, and then she very slowly gave in to things and
Yes.
accepted love, accepted that her life could be successful and positive, and she has made it into, you should, I mean, she's a phenomenal mom. Like, she really has done
Oh,
such
I
a
see it.
great job
Yeah.
with her own life that
I mean, I can tell.
it's really
Yeah.
encouraging.
I have to say, I mean, and that is like the point. That is the point of why I'm doing this, is like, to let people know that it can be successful. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean
It
it's going to
was
be
not
sunshine and
easy.
roses. None of that. But
Nope.
it can be. I mean, love is an amazing thing. Stability is an amazing thing. What you can give to a child and provide to a child will change
And
the
it's
course of
critical to
yeah,
early to introduce and practice, like, religiously, to do that for a child, because
yeah,
I mean, we come into this world not knowing anything.
that's right.
And then we make these building blocks, these foundations of how we think and how we understand the world from our parents. And it doesn't matter, blood or no blood, who that person is. We need a model to look after. And
100%.
and once we get past that building block, that's our foundation. It's there. That's how we see things, and that's it. Once we
And
get
Right.
a lot of people commented to me early on that taking her in at 13, that it could be a struggle, that those building blocks, shaky as they were already in place for her, and that we really had to get to know each other as people, and that I didn't
Mhm.
have the advantage of seeing her through her really young years. But people would say that to me, and I never really accepted that the way that it was, because that's not an impossibility. Yeah,
That's
maybe
right.
it's a factor, but it's sort of like it only blossoms and becomes an issue if you give it attention. And I think it was really
Mm.
like, yeah, I didn't know her before, but I know her now, and she made those steps from a lot of leaps and bounds from the time she was a preteen, and it
Mhm.
took a lot of time, and it definitely wasn't easy. I had many, many why God moments, like,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it
mean,
just kept
if
happening.
if you'd asked me to, foster a child who's 5 years old, I now would have the
Mhm.
same exact, reservations, hesitations. But
Mhm.
you know, even raising your own children isn't easy.
Right.
Right.
Of
So,
course.
I mean, if it's not truly about what how you feel, or it's about what you can do
Mhm.
for a child who literally has nothing against them.
Mhm.
Right.
That makes sense. Like, they don't have to,
Absolutely.
you can
I love
provide.
it that you just said that parenting is
Yeah.
a difficult job under the best of circumstances.
Really.
Absolutely.
It really is. And
Absolutely.
fostering it adds another layer. It just takes a hard job and makes it maybe a little bit more, but a dedicated foster parent who can stick with it. And I just remember keep thinking, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get
Yeah.
there. We're gonna
Yeah.
get there. And we got there. And maybe we're the outliers and like the success story, but
Mhm.
testimonies like that, you need to hear
That's fine. That's exactly
success.
true.
That's
That's
right.
what you need to hear, because people get very discouraged because they hear well, we tried this and this didn't work out because this
Right.
happened. It was really hard. And it's like, so you just stop? Like,
Right.
it's
Right. We can do hard things. You know that Glennon Doyle, the
yes,
podcast, like, we
we
can
can do
do
hard
hard things.
things.
I
Yeah.
say that sometimes to myself. I say it to
I
my
say it to
daughter
people
too.
all the time. I
When
say
my
it to
daughter
people
is having a difficult time, honey, we can do hard things. I know it's hard. We can do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing humans. You're just amazing humans. I'm so
We just keep
happy.
showing up every day and we worked out.
Oh,
She's my girl.
good. I'm
You're
just, I'm
amazing.
just,
Thank you for interviewing us.
yeah, I'm so happy to hear your story. I think it's really going to resonate for other people. And do you have any final words of like advice or thoughts or anything else that you want to share before we say goodbye?
I mean, as hard as this stuff is to talk about, I'm really glad that we can do it, because I'm reminded of how far Stacey and I have come,
Hmm.
and how far our love goes. And it's a nice to relive it, to appreciate what it takes. And as a parent myself, I struggle all the time with my kid, but just unconditional love is what's gonna take it.
That's
Patience,
right.
unconditional love, it's gonna be fine.
That's
Like,
right.
Mhm.
That's right. Oh, that's
There were a lot
beautiful.
of times where I wondered, am I able to love her through this? Like, if I just keep on loving, is love enough gonna make a difference? And for me, I always felt like it would. So I think if I had anything to say, because intuition played a huge role in this whole process for me
Hmm.
throughout, it
Hmm.
just sort of felt like, even at the times where I was unsure and thought, like, am I really what's best for her? Because it doesn't seem so right now.
Right.
My intuition would always be like, do not give up, do not give up, do not give up. You can do this. And
Mm.
so from start to finish with me, even now, I feel very confident in her taking care of herself as an adult and like being a self-sufficient, kind human being. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like trusting your intuition throughout the process, listening to yourself, and really believing that you can do
Yeah.
hard things. I love that, Rachel.
Yeah. I
Is
love
is
it.
worth it.
that's a great note to end on. Thank you really from the bottom of my heart for coming on. I'm so happy to talk to you guys today. And
It was
just stick
fun.
around for a minute after we end. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.